The Scuttlebutt is proud to welcome Millerstown Pick Apart, a self-service salvage yard where you can get parts you need for your car, truck, or van at very attractive prices because you do the work. Bring your own wrenches, hammers, screwdrivers, sockets, jacks, drills, or whatever you need, except for torches, to wrestle out the parts you need for the vehicles in the yard. Millerstown Pick Apart was created 17 years ago to provide reasonably priced solutions for auto parts needs. Millerstown is the perfect fit for those seeking discount auto parts to repair their own vehicles. Millerstown has a huge inventory of cars, which they purchase from individuals, towing companies, and auctions, and from its sister auto salvage recycling operation. For hours, directions, inventory, parts availability, and pricing, you can go to pickapartyard.com. That's PICAPARTYARD, pickapartyard.com, or call 724-224-4777. That's pickapartyard.com or call 724-224-4777.
I was trying to translate to them in the checkpoint. But then like when I talked to them, and I was like, so what car do you drive? And I was expecting like telling me like, if you live in America, you better be driving like a 69 like Chevelle or something.
Yeah.
And then this guy, oh yeah, I have a Honda Civic. And I'm like, seriously?
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of The Scuttlebutt. My name is Sean Hall. I'm the Director of Programming with the Veterans Breakfast Club, whose mission is to create communities of listening around veterans and their stories to connect, educate, heal, and inspire. If you've been watching The Scuttlebutt for some time or you're new to us, we ask that you please like, share, subscribe, ring the bell on YouTube, and give us a review across any of the podcast platforms. And also, if you'd like to reach out to me with any questions or comments or suggestions about content, you can reach me at Sean, that's SHAUN, at veteransbreakfastclub.org. I'm excited for our guest today. We have been doing sort of an Afghan series, talked with someone who works with engineering and was evacuated from Afghanistan. We talked with Adam Zafuto, a veteran of the Iraq and Afghan wars. But today we're going to switch over our view and focus to Iraq. And our guest today is Ehab, who was an interpreter working with the United States over in Iraq. And we wanted to dive into a bit of the interpreter's story. So we're going to start with an Iraqi interpreter, and then next week we're going to talk with an Afghan interpreter. Ehab, I'm super excited to have you a part of the podcast today, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and tell us your story. If you'd like to introduce yourself, give us a little bit of background on you.
Hey, Sean, thanks for inviting me. My name is Ehab Akrawi. I'm an Iraqi citizen. I was an interpreter for the U.S. Armed Forces in Iraq, and I gained access to become a U.S. citizen through special immigration status. So I'm from right now, live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
I've been there for about since 2009. I live in West Mifflin by the Kennywood Park. So many people around the country knows the Kennywood Park.
Mm-hmm.
I only been there, although I live just across street from it.
Yeah.
So I'm from home office. So if you hear my kids in the background, please forgive me for that. I can't control them. I have two toddlers and they're not very quiet. So
it's all right. I got a toddler upstairs too, who I'm sure people hear her like doom, 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 right back and forth. So I totally understand that.
Yeah.
Well, so you grew up, what part of Iraq did you grow up in?
So I was born in 1986 in Nasiriyah.
Mm-hmm.
Nasiriyah is it's a very old, actually it's the oldest city in the Middle East, I would think.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Sumerian, it's Nasiriyah was built on the remains of Ur, the city of Ur, the capital of the Sumerian civilization. So it's very enriched in culture, art, music,
history,
a well-known city. The people like Iraq, all the intellectual properties, the thinkers, the philosophers, the singers, the historians, the people who did the Iraq poetry, almost many of the actually Iraq leaders, the prime ministers throughout the history of Iraq were from Nasiriyah. That's interesting. So yeah, I was born there, although I'm not from Nasiriyah. My family roots, and my mom from Nasiriyah. My family root is from Najaf, which is about 100 miles south Baghdad. There's a shrine there for a religious holy shrine for Shia Muslim. The tomb in the grave of a mosque they call him the Golden Mask.
Mhm.
Anybody in military case has a golden dome of Ali bin Abi Talib. So we grew up. That's my family from there. But my father, like late 60s, 1969, he moved to Baghdad because he joined the military in 1970, early 1970.
At
And
that time, was it you were capable of being enlisted but also drafted?
yes.
Okay.
So if you don't want to join the military, if you're healthy, capable, you have to do in male, you have to do 3 years if you have if you don't have a high school degree. But if you have a high school degree, I think you do like, I think 2 years and a half, maybe 2 years. I don't remember the numbers, but I know if you have a college degree, you do it for a year and a half, but then you're like officer.
Mhm.
But then like if you got I think PhD or something, you only had to do it like 6 months or something. So
Yeah.
it based on, so if you don't go to school or you don't do that and you're healthy, you meet the standards, you have to do 3 years of
Okay.
service. I mean, it have changed since Iraq was begun, but the vast majority, you know, during Ba'ath Party took over in 1968 of a military coup. They made it into like 3 year service. So, but my father wasn't like drafted; he was enlisted. When
Mhm.
he went in, he was only 17.
Mhm.
Now, if you enlisted, you go to school and you immediately become like a sergeant. So
Mhm.
uh, that's how my father, and my father had to go to Baghdad because he was in the military band. He wasn't like an infantry or anything, so he was a musician. So, and that's where the
Mhm.
military college of war over there in Baghdad, and that's what the band staged at. And so he had to go there and join because he liked music and all that stuff. There wasn't, you know, there weren't a lot of opportunities in Iraq if you want to study music
Mhm.
back in the 70s and beyond that. Uh, so thought like the, you know, military paid really well in Iraq. Iraq
Mhm.
has treated their military really good up until 1990. So they got paid well. They got new cars once in a while, I think every 10 years or something.
Mhm.
Um, so my father was like, well, if I don't go to school, then I just, might be a good future, you know, I have to build a career up. So
Right.
he went and so we lived in Baghdad, married my mom 1983, I think, or 84. And I was born in 1986. I have one brother who's older than me. I have two other brothers younger than me and two sisters. They're all younger than me. So I'm
Mhm.
second one in the chain.
So in your early years, you're growing up sort of late 80s, early 90s. Um, you know, this is after after Desert Storm and Desert Shield. Um, what was the sense of was there a sense in Nasiriyah about who America was and what we, you know, the relationship and, you know, sort of geopolitically? I guess it's a big question, but it's just like, you know, did you grow up learning about the world and America's place in it and Iraq's place in it and things like that?
Um, so I can't speak about like the 80s, like up until 1990, but in 1990, when Iraq took over Kuwait, I definitely remember that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was only but 4 or 5, but I remember, I have a short memory as a, you know, I remember when I was toddler. Um, and so I remember there was a big propaganda machines through the news. So Iraq has only one channel,
Mm-hmm.
one TV channel, and it's a state money like channel.
Yeah.
So suddenly I remember too much of, you know, America's enemy and wants to kill the children and all that good stuff. And when I, like a year later, like 1992 after Desert Storm, but then the Desert Storm, I completely remember that. I remember the airplanes, the bombs, the cruise missiles, that we all saw that.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was so intense that, you know, you could just stare on the roof of your house. Like our roofs are flats and people can get up
Mm-hmm.
and hang out. And when you go, we used to go there because, and you could, you know, if you wait for a while, you're going to see a cruise missile or something.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how intense it was back in 1991.
Yeah.
There was a lot of military trucks, convoys going in and out. Almost every male that I know in my family who had a just grown beard is in the military. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, I thought the norm was like that. I mean, like when we were kids, we thought like any country in the world is like that. We did not know. the life outside this country, as I like as a kid, but I don't think the young ones, like the young adult male, or knew that, because it seems like right now, if you ask me to get drafted in the Iraqi military or even U.S. military,
Mm-hmm.
unless there's like a absolute horrible fate that if we don't do it, then I'm just gonna say, like, seriously, I'm not gonna do that. But it seems like the people there are in the Iraqi military, they didn't care. They just like a normal routine to them.
Mm-hmm.
I just like, I even asked my uncle, I'm like, when you went to Kuwait, didn't you say like, hey, I'm gonna die there? He's like, well, I kind of did, but I also said I could get executed for not going to the military.
Yeah.
So
that's
like,
like that was his option: join or
oh
execution.
yeah, if the country is in the war, like Saddam changed that. If the country is in the war, yeah, you could get executed.
Wow.
It's just, but even though, like people didn't say like, hey, if I run out of the military, why should I be executed? I think that's a horrible idea. Nobody talked about that.
Yeah.
It's just like, wow, he just got captured. Yeah, I hope they're not getting executed. When you hear your neighbor, he was not going to the military and got captured. It wasn't like, that sucks.
Right.
Why he's going to have to get executed. None of that stuff. Like it
Like the
was
guys
like he
here
was
who
just doing the
dodged.
wrong thing. That's what it sounded like. It's really what is it called? The sheep like herd mentality, whatever. I've heard like there's a example when a sheep jumped off a cliff, all the other sheep will like follow him. It seems like when somebody just like, hey, I'm just going to join the military, and if I don't, I get executed, then everybody's just joined with him. But those who don't, then they're like, yeah, sorry, man, you should have just came with us, instead of condemning the regime. But
right.
I still think about that, but I think the society was kind of brainwashed. It really was. That's what I think.
So there was, it's interesting because a lot of the veterans a part of VBC, they have a lot of military background in their families. So in a sense, you also had this military background in your family.
Yeah.
Did that lead to, after the American invasion of Iraq, did that lead to some level? Did you think about it enlisting in the Iraqi army, or did that help your decision to try to work with the Americans?
Oh man, I always wanted to join the Iraqi army. I think I should have just at least joined a little bit, so just to kind of be like proud of, I've done something to my country and whatnot. Especially when ISIS took over Mosul, there were.
This was in 2008, roughly. 2014. Thank you.
So when ISIS took over Mosul, there was like tens of thousands of volunteer militias that who just basically people that just the army fell like miserably. And there were militias that actually just formed by guys, and they just went and pushed ISIS out of Baghdad and secured Baghdad because ISIS was just sweeping, like,
that's what made the Americans form the coalition after we had exited. We came back.
Yeah, I wished I was able. If I was in Iraq, I would definitely join these militias just to fight. And those are volunteers. Like, they don't join the military; they just fight for a while. And once the Iraq, military got a little bit stronger, they just went back home. My brother is one of them. I wish I was there. I would have fought. Especially, I'm trained. I know how. I feel like I could have helped. But back in Iraq in 2003, I wanted to join, but I thought there were. First, my family wouldn't let me. Back in 2003, for example, I was way too young to join the military.
13?
But I was, 15.
13, 15? Okay.
Yeah, 15. So I was 15. If I would have joined the Iraqi military, I have to wait until 18. But then I end up going to be an interpreter because I made a fake ID.
Well, tell me a bit more about that story. Our listeners, you've told the story with VBC before, but our listeners on the podcast here might not know about how you got to become an interpreter. It's a pretty funny story.
Yeah. So back in 2003, I think May 2003. Well, Actually, before the war started, we left Baghdad. We went to a farm. We went back to Najaf. We have a Najaf is the place where the shrine is, and it's about 100 miles south of Baghdad. And there's a a shrine in there, and we also have in the suburb of the city we have a farm. So we have a farm that we inherited from our grandpa, and in 1991 we went back to the farm, and it had a house that like made out of built out of clay, like dirt clay, a brick.
And these are like pretty well-made houses, though. Like, we've seen the pictures of them sort of online, but like these aren't going to blow over. It's like
the Babylonian style. It's like the 7,000 years ago way of building house.
Right.
It isn't like a red brick Italian work like here. It's a little bit different. It's made of like mud, like dirt and all that stuff. But it stands for good. I mean, people still build them up until today in the countryside.
Yeah.
Nevertheless, that particular house probably been there for about a couple hundred years, because my grandfather inherited it from whoever got that land from. But anyhow, so we went there, and nobody's lived in the house since 1991. 1991, we lived there, so we thought in 2003 it's going to be more intense. Let's go back there. So my family and I went there. But then the bombardments got so intense on Baghdad and other cities, and people, out of our relatives, know the story that in 1991 we went to the farm, we were fine, and we were planning if something goes wrong, we'll go there again. So everybody feels like, oh, we have a relative, we have a farm, like let's go to them. So no phones, none of that stuff. So we have no coverage, none of that stuff. So just little, cars are like, oh, here's my uncle, here's my aunt and her family. And it's just like people started piloting and didn't know that. Little, we had at some point about 65 male and some like dozens of like children and women, about maybe more than 60 or whatever. But the house was so small. So we started building tents and, making cut palm tree leaves and all that stuff, like because it was cold. So we have a stable for hot cows, but didn't have roof. We had to kind of come up, build improvised roof. I'll say build out of made out of like a tree branches and things like that, and leaves.
How did everyone get fed? Like, it sounds very much almost like a refugee camp. Like everybody was just.
It was like a refugee camp, yeah. And but so Iraq was before the war gave a dry food supply. I call it dry, but what I mean by that, like rice, beans, dry beans, things like that, tomato paste and cans, something that you can hold, that, and sugar, maybe like a cooking oil, vegetable oil, all that stuff. So you all have to care about is the groceries, the vegetables, the fresh stuff, and maybe the meat, which is fairly available. The vegetables there, it's absolutely cheap. Like when you come here in America, people like buy watermelon for like $5.99. People just take one. In some store they take just one slice and take it and put it in a box. In Iraq, I park the car and just get 5 about this big each. Like I can't even carry.
Yeah.
That's like for 2 days supply, because we love watermelon there. But anyhow, and it's super cheap. So anyhow, so that was an issue. I mean, there was obviously not the typical meal that you eat every day, and it's not good, but it would be something like rice and beans and things like that.
Yeah.
There was like several types of beans. Anyhow, so we'll stand there, but then when the bombardments got even more intense, there were people escaping from Baghdad, but they didn't know where to go. So whenever like our land is like off a highway, and they saw the cars and tents, and they were like, "Oh, it looks like people settling here, and nobody cares." So we're like waking up in the morning with five more cars with families, like they're just in our land.
Wow.
And people like little, it was like hundreds.
And it's not like you can turn them away.
No, you can't tell them. Iraqis are very generous. So we just kept laughing and all that stuff. But anyhow, but then we went to the back then when the Najaf was liberated before Baghdad. So Baghdad was, I think, April 9th, when Baghdad, was declared Saddam no longer in power. I think Najaf was April 2nd when the Americans got there. So about a week, 5 days beforehand. And when that happened, there were scattered Iraqi military posts in the desert. And so we went there and got a tent. There's just like supply. There was everything. There were like guns, cannons, tanks, anything you want. Wow. We just went there and got some goodies. We actually found some food, flour, and things like that, and we just took it in it because it's in the desert. So we took that. We took some kerosene tanks, jugs, and we used that for cooking. But we also got some like gasoline, gas cans somewhere we found. We took those as well.
Just sort of scrounging, like finding things to help support the mass amount of people coming on.
Because if you don't take it, it's obviously, I don't think it's a stealing. It's just gonna go bad.
Right.
They just took it, and it wasn't just us. Everybody was doing the same thing.
Totally.
But we were like trying to get some military tents. So we went and got military tents, and everybody else got military tents. So they literally disassembled all the military tents, put them in our lands. It looks like a resistance camp now. But anyhow, like 2 days later, when Baghdad's still fighting, there were helicopters landed in our camp. They assaulted us. They thought it was like some sort of resistance state in there. But once they found, because they saw military camp. Some people don't have a car or whatever. They just brought a military truck and be like, I could use this if I need it. So they just brought like a military truck, and we didn't care. So that's how it was. And so they assaulted our camp. They didn't hurt anyone or anything, but the helicopters made blow the tents off. It was hilarious. But then like the Americans talked to us, and I spoke to them, and I thought they were.
At this point, did you know English?
A little bit, very little. But I was very intrigued by, like the Iraqi soldier. It's just like a soldier on a skeleton. He's like so skinny. It's like almost like the Korean soldier. Like I think like, because in the 90s, the nutrition for the army was like horrible.
Yeah.
So they're like, but then like when I saw the Americans, they looked like too big, looks giant, and I didn't realize they have the
Kevlar vests and
the vest, and I just thought they were just muscular like that. I just thought, wow, what is these creatures? Damn, look at those guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the guy just walked like this, and they have goggles. It looked like a alien. You know what I mean? So.
Oh, I can imagine. You have 13, and these guys land, and you're just like, you've never seen anything like it, like body armor and all this stuff.
I've never seen like that. And even someone had a camelback, like it's like a hose, and was like drinking out of it and spitting. And I thought that's some like high tech tank. And I couldn't figure out where is it, like, because it was so like built into his gear.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure it out, like, what is he drinking? You know what I mean?
Probably a Rippet.
I don't know. Most likely water, I would say.
Probably water. A Rippet might be.
But then someone spit like the chew, and I kept looking at the dark stuff that came out of his mouth. Like, what is these people? Like, what is this in his mouth? So anyhow, so I got intrigued, and back like, then fast forward 2 months later, we couldn't go back to Baghdad because there's no bridge. What on the other side? You had to cross the Euphrates to get to Baghdad somehow. The bridge is all knocked down. So then until they fixed the bridge, it took about until May. We went back to Baghdad. I have a friend who's named Omar. Him and I were kind of, friends, and we started hanging up in the neighborhoods of Baghdad. There was like no police, none of that stuff. It was like a freedom for the first time. Like you could do anything.
Was it dangerous as well?
It wasn't really, because the people think like I mean, there was obviously looting when we got there, yeah, but it wasn't like criminal. Like it wasn't like people killing each other,
Right.
Yeah. So, but there was definitely looting, and as a young teenagers, we just wanted to go to see the places that we never been able to see,
Yeah.
Saddam Palace and things like that. And when you just go there, you find nothing. It's all been looted.
Yeah.
So, but anyhow, so we went there in the neighborhoods of Baghdad. We saw Americans all over places in like small camps and all that stuff. Not until in the center of Baghdad, we found a checkpoint, military checkpoint, and we're like, hey, let's go talk to these guys. Now, I am very fascinated with cars,
Hmm.
American cars. We built cars at home. My family have, like my uncle had a garage. The family had a garage, and they were only fixing American cars.
Hmm.
So I'm fascinated with the cars. Also, the Marlboro Man was cool. I have his posters. Um, I have the cutoff of the magazine of the cars. You're not
Mm.
allowed to hold these magazine, but I used to get them black market and not keep the whole magazine, just the picture of the car.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I have a stickers in my bedroom. I know like this is Chevelle, this is 68 Shelby, whatever that stuff.
Mm. Yeah.
So I was very odd. Not a lot of kids have into that, and I think that I don't know. That's probably stereotype behavior. So I might be had some sort of spectrum of autism, I guess, that I'm just intrigued to things that I normally other kids won't do that. So, and I was obsessed with before that. I was obsessed with sort of like in the language. So because I
Mm.
kept watching the movies as well.
Yeah.
I got this in black market, but I was obsessed with. I wasn't good at English, but I was obsessed not with the language itself, but the more like the tone, the
Mm.
slang,
Yeah.
the way to talk. So
Was there a
like when
particular
I'm
movie that you watched like religiously? Like, I'm gonna watch that all the time.
Titanic,
Oh.
Braveheart, and all this that that a list of movies. Some like Nicolas Cage movies, Jack Nicholson,
Hmm.
all that stuff, and the old ones like Bruce Lee and all that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to go get them in cinemas. A lot of them I forgot their name, and like Arnold Schwarzenegger,
Like
all this like 80s and 70s.
like
These were like
Terminator and
yeah,
Total
yeah,
Recall
yeah,
and all that.
yeah,
Yeah.
all that stuff. So actually, I watched the show. What is it called? Cosby Show.
Okay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I loved the show. I thought it was very cool. I loved it, baby. Uh, I loved what's his name, Cockroach, his friend,
Mm.
and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I loved it. I really did. But I was obsessed with like trying to speak the language, but then like I wanted to speak exactly like how they pronounce it. So in Iraq, you would like learn like English, and but like, and when I hear the English, American English, I try to say not car, but say car, for example. Like,
Uh-huh.
and I realized that was even car is not really common in America, only in New York and in the movies.
Yeah.
When I came here, they still say car, but not like car. You know what I mean? But
Yeah. Yeah.
anyhow,
Yeah.
so
But
I
it's so
was like,
interesting, like linguistically, like because how how we talk or how I learned English, growing up, like the accents like are very interesting to us. Like if I think of a Southern accent or a Boston or New York or sort of mountain accents, they sound interesting to me, but they never really pick. I can imagine that someone who's never heard English before, he picks up on all these different dialects and all the ways that we speak
yeah,
English. And it's like very intriguing that, all these different regions. I would imagine that Iraq's the same way, like the different regionalisms of like
it
how,
does. Yeah.
yeah.
So I've always tried to practice to say phrases from the movie, even though I didn't know what they meant. But I try to say them exactly like how they said it.
Hmm.
Maybe look at myself in the mirror.
Like I'll
Uh,
be back. Like that sort of
yeah,
like,
something
yeah.
like that, or like like I try to like talk like the Cosby and all that stuff. I thought that's and I've always imagined myself that I have. Uh, I'm at 45 years old and I'm a successful businessman in America.
Mm.
And it's like when I go to the bathroom and we have a mirror, our bathroom look horrible because it's bathroom in Iraq.
Yeah.
but I imagined those that I would see in the movies.
Yeah.
When like two, gangs member go in the bathroom and knock out someone in the bathroom, like the mirrors and the lights and all that stuff. Like I imagined that, and just like imagine going like this, fixing my collar and all that stuff. Exactly like that. So I like, and try to say it exactly what they say in the movie. But anyhow, so when I saw the checkpoint, I was like, wow. It's like, have you heard someone very obsessed with aliens, but like finally meets an alien? That's how the feeling was. Like, wow, let's go talk to these guys.
Not afraid of them. You weren't afraid. You were just like, they're not threatening. They're just standing.
I was afraid. I mean, I could get shot anytime. That's what I thought, at least. You still kind of brainwashed that Americans are bad and all that stuff. But I was trying to get close, but then I talked to them. They're like, oh, this guy speaks English. I said little, and I try to help them. I was trying to translate to them in the checkpoint, and they really liked that idea. But then, like, when I talked to them, and I was like, so what car do you drive? And I was expecting, like, telling me, like, if you live in America, you better be driving like a 69 like Chevelle or something.
Yeah.
And then this guy, oh yeah, I have a Honda Civic. And I'm like, seriously? Like, then he shows me, I swear to God, he opened his wallet and showed it to me. Like, there was no like smartphones back then. Yeah. Like, picture of his wife, his son, in his car. That's typical American. You won't see that in any other culture. Like, nobody cares about the car. Right. But then if it was like Chevelle or something like that, I would have definitely said, yeah, it's worth it.
I had a Honda Civic and I never carried a picture of it in my wallet, but I guess
I guess like maybe like, because you grew up with the smartphone. How old are you?
40.
Yeah, well, you're older than me, but I guess I don't know. So but maybe you are, but I thought it was odd. But I know how like Americans with cars, they like cars and all that stuff.
I love cars. I guess if I had like a Corvette, I would probably carry a picture of it like on my phone or something. It'd be like, yeah, this is my Corvette. Yeah. But even now, I'm like, I'm personally, my dad, who does like, sports cars, like I'm sure he has like pictures in his phone of like, this is my sports car, But again, if you're also a deployed soldier and you're just pining for home in some way, you got a picture of your kid, your wife, and potentially something you really love, and it's like, man, I love my Honda. That thing's just like a tank. It runs like a tank. I love it. I'm just gonna have a picture of it.
Yeah.
But anyway, so, you're thinking everybody's driving around in these like beautiful old classic cars, and he's like, yeah, here's my
That's
Honda.
What I thought, man.
Yeah.
I thought America is all about like all that stuff, all you hear in the But then anyhow, but it gets better. When I worked with the Marines, they were like, when I became interpreter, I was like, years later, I worked with the Marines, and they were like, you used to work for the Army. I can't believe that. These guys are so soft and all that stuff. I'm like, oh, really? And he's like, yeah. I was like, so what car do you drive? And he goes, Toyota Prius. And I was like, yeah, that shows me how tough you are. So I was like, what the hell is wrong with these people, man? Like, what are the cool cars? What are the like electric guitars and all that stuff? Where's the like rock, stuff?
We could probably do a whole podcast of you going to like just auto shows and just like checking out, old classic cars. I'm sure that's probably, if it's something you enjoy doing, just going and checking out.
We probably can. Yeah. But anyhow, so I talked to them, and they're like, hey, could you help us? And, we started helping them in the checkpoint. There was this guy, they were like, well, they became our friends, and we hanged out for about like 3 hours. Got dark a little bit. They said, you want to come with us? I was like, sure. So we hopped on the Humvee. It had no door back then. And it felt so great. I'm in this like awesome vehicle that I've never seen. And like, I felt like I was a celebrity, because we went to the market and we were like in the back of the Humvee, just laying on their luggage and all that stuff. And people just looked at us like, these Americans, who are these Iraqis, is just hanging out with them. Like, these guys are so cool. Like, you know what I mean? Everybody's looking at us. I felt like I was celebrity. And if you're a teenager, you just crave for attention.
Oh, totally.
So it felt great. I just didn't want to tell them like, hey, it's dark, it's late, I want to go home. I just went, I didn't care. I was scared. I don't know what what's going to happen. But then when we went to one of Saddam palaces, and they told us, hey, thank you for helping us. Take whatever you want. I was like, really? And they're like, yeah. So we went to the toilet and we found a golden stall, toilet stall. We didn't take that. Instead, I grabbed a military net because we're of course, teenager, and we saw there was like a artificial like pond, fish pond.
Yeah.
Man, there was fish in it like size of my leg, and they were like so obvious because nobody cared about him, and it's so dry in Iraq, the ponds start drying, and nobody cared. So they were like swimming in shallow water.
Oh.
And I was like, damn. And I was like, then I went in there, I checked them, and they were like edible fish. Like they weren't like a goldfish or something.
Yeah,
they were,
yeah.
I guess Saddam was used to eat them. I would think. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, we need to get some of these fish, man. He's like, oh yeah, man. So anyhow, so we brought a military net and we threw it and grabbed like 4.
Yeah.
They were so big, they dragged us to the big 8. But before we gone, this was sergeant says, hey, thanks for helping us. Can you work for us? I want to offer you a job. And I was like, I'm not really sure. But then Omar goes like in Arabic, he's like, no. We're gonna work for them. And I was like, well, I don't know what my parents are gonna say about this. And he's like, well, there's no school. I mean, you have to tell them. And he says, these Americans have a lot of money, and we're gonna milk the hell out of them. I was like, oh yeah. And he's like, yeah, let me just, I'm gonna negotiate with them, and I'm gonna get us a lot of money. And I was like, oh sure. Oh, but I trusted him because I thought he was always the bright in mind and very smart. And I was like, yeah, go ahead, man. And he goes, all right. So he asked the sergeant, he goes, well, we can work for you, but we don't want hourly. We want like a flat rate daily. And I was like, oh, what is that? And he goes, and he's like, the sergeant was like, yeah, how much do you want? And he was like, flat rate, $5 a day, $5 a day. And the sergeant was like, that's it? And he's like, yeah, that's it. And he was like, I think you got a job. He laughed so hard, the sergeant. And he goes like, he calls people and he says, these people wants to negotiate and says $5 a day. Of course, we did not know how much. We thought $5 a lot of money because it's certainly a lot in Iraq.
Yeah.
When you exchange it with, you can buy a lot of goods with it. So we thought it was good. Thought $5 was good, but for a second I thought like, dude, you could have done better and said maybe 7. He seems like accept the $5 right away, But anyhow, so yeah, we got paid $5 a day. We used to go there, but for days, he came back to us and he goes, I have good news and bad news. And we're like, what? And he goes, well, the good news is, he said, which one do you want to hear? And I said, well, shoot me the good news. I need that first. So he says, well, the good news, I'm going to hire you as official employee to work for the Department of Defense as contract. Bad news, you're only like 15. And I was like, yeah. And he goes like, well, you have to be 18 to be able to do that, to sign any contract with the US government. And I was like, I am 18. And he was like, didn't you say you were 15? I was like, I pulled my Iraqi ID and I said, can you read this? And he goes, no. And I was like, well, it says 18. And he looked at it and he knew it was lying. He just looked at it and he says, I think it is. Yeah, I think it says 18 here. But anyhow, he wrote it down as 18. But then after work, we went, Omar and I went to Don Market in Baghdad and we made fake IDs. We changed our age for 18.
That's what you do. You go to a market and fake ID. It's easy.
Oh man, yeah, there was like market in Baghdad. You can fake American passport if you want. Wow. It really is. You can do it. It's like I made one time. It was easier for me to apply for get a fake one at some point than trying to apply for a lost one, like a lost or stolen card. So I just wouldn't get one from the market. And the guy who makes it, he says, I make it more official than the government one. And that's how he says. But anyhow, so we went and made fake IDs. It says 18, just in case they behind us. Yeah. And after that, we were signed to another unit. worked at the Baghdad Camp Victory military airport. But
What did your family think?
my family have not known about this until 2006.
Wow. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. So I used to go back and forth daily. I mean, at the beginning was like I was hanging out with my friends, but when it became more obvious, we're like, hey, I work with the oil company, the national
Yeah.
oil company, and pays me well and all that stuff. But in 2006, they realized that I wasn't working in oil because my
Mhm.
hands wasn't greasy or anything.
Right.
Yeah, but they were scared. They
Mhm.
were worried that I'm gonna get hurt, but I kind of lied to them, which I regret. I
Oh,
told them,
you
I'm
had, I
sorry.
mean, in a way, you had to do what you had to do, but I think the
Yeah,
thing that I've
it's a
I've read a
it's a
lot
white lie.
about, yeah, and the thing I read a lot about is like reprisal killings, like uh, you know, people that were mad that that people were working with the Americans. And was there ever a concern with you about that, like people coming against you because you're working with the Americans?
Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, I was very careful. Most people get killed is when they leave the military base. It will be
Mhm.
some like will spot them, and some other car will chase them and kill them. I have cut down that. That's when my family realized that I actually don't work for the company, but because by 2006 the violence was so intense that I was going home once every 3 months. That's just
Mm.
crazy. My house is not too bad, and the problem is I couldn't quit because if I quit, you're already made the sin. They're still gonna kill you,
Yeah, yeah.
and I can't like there by that time. There's nobody physically threatened me, but
Mhm.
I wasn't sure if they know me or not because they could know me. I don't know.
Mhm.
So I was like, the safest place to me is to stay where I'm at. That's what it is. And I'd rather die in ID or get shot as opposed to get kidnapped. And I mean, they were doing horrible to the interpreters. Like
Yeah.
it isn't cutting their heads off. It isn't like no. They went to the next level, which basically drilling holes in their knees while they're alive.
Oh, wow.
Like just horrible. Yeah. And like
Mhm.
and they're like, thighs or like the hard bones in your body. They drill like they found holes and drills in their knees and their elbows, and the doctors determined on many medical reports that these were done when these guys were like alive. I mean, that's
Jesus.
that type of like, so that
Just,
was very scary. Yeah.
yeah, just torture.
Yeah, it's a very scary torture. Um, so that was so. Like I said, I much rather die in a fight than die like
Getting,
that. You know what I
yeah,
mean?
totally.
So for me to stay, yeah, maybe I was in risk of dying in an ID or a sniper, shot or whatever, or firefight. But I thought that was better for me
Mhm.
because at least my family will have my body, my remains,
Right.
and all that stuff. So
So we'll flash forward a bit. You know, you worked with the Americans, but did this level of violence and the level of threat, is that what kind of led you to be like, I need to get myself and my family out of the country and get to America and enlist for, or not enlist, but sign up for the SIV?
well, I could have gone with the SIV long time ago. I could have done it since 2006. But at the beginning, I was really have a good hope for the Iraq future. Saddam was gone. Iraq is a very rich country. It's better than the Gulf countries in many ways.
Mhm.
It has more oil. It has two rivers. It has religious and um, old civilizations like the Sumerians. It has anything. It have farmlands
Mhm.
that the Gulf countries don't have. And look at like the UAE, the Dubai, and Kuwait. These countries are really nice, but we have much more potential. They do all they have only the oil,
Yeah.
um, you know. But anyhow, so I thought like, why would I go to America? My country is probably going to be better than America.
Mhm.
But uh, in 2007, I started having doubts.
This was
Uh,
as ISIS was kicking up around that time.
Well, it wasn't ISIS. It was, part of Al Qaeda, which is,
Okay.
Zarqawi's, folks.
Yeah.
Which it's a branch of Al Qaeda. It's basically Al Qaeda. It's Al Qaeda, and it wasn't that. I think we could have, when I was fighting with the Americans, and part of it is training the Iraqi army. My units was doing that, and I was involved in that. I knew that's, the terrorism in Iraq, it isn't deeply rooted in the community. It's not like Kandahar. It's not like Mazar Sharif or whatever. It's not like,
both
it's
of
not
those being
Afghanistan. It's
cities.
like let's go get another a similar city. Maybe Afghanistan is too far. Maybe say place in Saudi Arabia, in the Hijaz Valley. In the Hijaz Valley, the security is good, but the potential for terrorism is definitely there, because there's a lot of the Takfiris, the Salafi, Wahhabi. It's rooted in the community. So Iraq, it has a terrorist that time groups, but I know they're not going to last forever. We eventually either going to kill them all or whatever. Something will happen, because it's not like the terrorism idea of terrorism is not deeply rooted in the Iraqi community. It would be something temporary, yes, but once people learn how to become and overcome it, because Iraqis are not fanatics in religion, they're not. Iraq had the first country in the Middle East to get into driver license to women. For example, women drive, and we have women in politics as well. Even in Saddam time, was very sectarian, and all that stuff. So it isn't like Saudi Arabia or anything like that. Saudi Arabia, if it has terrorists in it, it would be much difficult to clean up, because there are already fanatics in madrasa that teaches these, intolerance and fanatics ideas.
Yeah.
But I was concerned about the corruption in the government, and seems like it was getting worse. And once you have corruption, you know what you're doing. You're becoming more like Mexico or Colombia.
Right.
You have, or Venezuela. You have everything you need. You have people, farmlands, natural resources, but if you have corruptions, you're just going worse and worse by time goes. That's what I thought. I said, there's no, and it doesn't seem to be either potential or of a trying for the government or politician to stop this corruption. I mean, there's difference between somebody, like I give you an example. Like I was okay. Like I thought like Al Qaeda would go away from Iraq eventually. Although there were Al Qaeda in Iraq, but the government is trying. The people are trying to get rid of Al Qaeda. But in terms of corrupt, nobody's trying. Not the government, not the people. Yet people do complain about it, but they're not doing anything about it. They don't have that culture of a free speech yet.
Right.
So I don't know. So I thought, you know what, this might be not a good place for me. I need to go, and I have the option to go to the United States. So I, start out my paperwork,
And talk a bit about that process. It seems very confusing from everything that I hear and read. It seems like the SIV program is just like backwards and old.
It got easier over the years.
And that's a key. That's a key word there. Years. It took years to get this process going. Correct?
Yeah. It got much easier. I think the last easy step, just get on the plane, like it happened in Afghanistan. We even check you if you actually work for us or not when we get to America. So that's how easy it got. But at my time, you have to you have to do background clearance check. So that's a lengthy process.
That's the thing that I think I have the most confusion on when I read anything about this is the background checks. And I don't know if Iraq or Afghanistan carries the same level of history for each individual person. Like I had a social security number when I was born. they know every place that I've lived. They know every place that I've worked based on my
Yep.
social security number and the family that I was
They
with.
don't have that structure there.
Yeah.
So
So how do they do a background check on someone who doesn't have that code or that level
they'll
of?
ask you questions. They'll ask
Okay.
you questions. You obviously have background checks about you being an interpreter, and maybe they contact the people that you worked with. Do you trust this guy, for example?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think he should become American? I mean, there's a lot of I mean, I don't know, but I know they'll ask about you.
It's like all word of mouth.
A lot of it, yeah, but they already have your fingerprints and all that stuff, your
Mm-hmm.
eye, you know, print, I guess,
Yeah.
and all that's information. But then they ask you questions, and they seems to ask you the same question, but in different forms, trying to
Mm-hmm.
get answers from you. Which I'm an individualist, so I really immediately recognize those, and not like I cheated or anything, but I thought that
Mm-hmm.
was hilarious.
Yeah. And is
And I
it
was
it's
like,
kind of
I realized what's going on,
right.
Maybe an ordinary person didn't, but I thought I realized what's going on. But anyhow,
Mm-hmm.
so they do this background check, which is fine. But here's where the step gets impossible. You need to get a recommendation from a general.
Mm.
And here's the thing. If you're an Iraqi interpreter, you're not allowed to work for general. So a general gets promoted by the Congress.
Mm-hmm.
And a general, if say he wrote a paperwork for me and I end up drunk driving, knock on wood, and maybe, I don't know, kill people. And
Mm-hmm.
it's going to go all on the news. Ehab was a drunk driving. He was an interpreter. Oh, he was recommended by General so-and-so. So he's completely, his career will be ruined if I do anything wrong. I mean,
Mm.
that's how I think why they weren't given anything. I would think like if I take his steps, that's how what I would think.
Yeah.
I don't know this guy. He doesn't work for me. I just saw him now. There's a lot of words of mouth, but I'm not going to write a recommendation because I can go public if something goes wrong, if those people are wrong, or any if he did something not maybe intentionally,
Yeah.
So they were very scared. And what they do, they don't deny your request. There's no, like, the policy doesn't say deny. It says if they have good background check, you should write them recommendation. It doesn't say you should. It says you get there, then you get the recommendation. But doesn't say the options that, that's kind of like, it was sloppy written the way it is. That's how I think.
Mm-hmm.
So the generals do, you get your paperwork like this, and they're like, oh, this is good, great. I know what to do about this. Put it on the shelf. Why? Because they can't refuse it. They're not going to give it to you. They just leave it to the next general, which,
Oh.
they rotate every maybe year and a half, 6, 7 months. They say,
Right.
the next guy who will kind of deal with it. And then next thing you know, you and other folks, your files are piling up and nobody cares.
Yeah.
Up until 2008, like mid 2008, there was a guy named Colonel Michael Silverman. He was a 369 Armor Battalion, and they were 2 days before leaving America. They did 18 months. I worked for this battalion. I did wonderful work with him and for him, and he really liked me. And one day he says, 2 days before leaving, sitting at the chow hall, and I walked, because he's a colonel. Nobody, he just tell me to come sit here. And I just sat. And I was like, hey, what's going on, Colonel? And he's like, yeah, man, thought we're having dinner, and probably I'm not going to see you tomorrow because we're preparing. Thought maybe we can have last dinner here. You could get to see each other. I'm like, oh, good. When we talked out, and he was like, why don't you come to America? There's this SI. I was like, oh, I can't do that. And he goes, what is this IV program thing? I know, yeah, do you see a lot about it in news? There's nobody actually made it there. And he was like, why? And I was like, he's actually a lawyer, by the way. And so he goes, why? And I said, well, here's the deal. And I explained to him, and I said, unless you know the general personally, they will sponsor you.
Mm-hmm.
But then he goes, yeah, I can get you that sponsorship. And I was like, you're leaving like after tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
And he goes, yeah, but I can do that. And I actually really trust this guy. I think he's confident. He's a man of his word.
Mm-hmm.
Super smart. But at that time, I did not believe him. I thought he maybe like he's not like his tensions are right, but he just does not understand that he can't do it.
Yeah.
I thought he was just giving me a promise and being naive, to be honest. It's like, I said, Mike, Colonel, you can't do it. The general does not know me. He's not. You're leaving in 2 days. Maybe if you try, take a month to get to the general. And he goes, do you know my new XO? Is the commander assistant, the executive officer? And I was like, no. He's like, have you met him? And I was like, no. And he goes like, all right, well, his XO was sitting, and he just called him, and the XO came in. He was a major. He's like, have a seat. And he's like, he's, Boxer. My interpreter name is Boxer. He's like, he's Boxer interpreter. Then Michael Silverman said, the colonel says, I forgot his name. His name is one of those that you can't memorize. Very unique name, different name. Anyhow, but he said, Major so-and-so. I didn't tell you what major. He's like, was very excited. He's like, I didn't tell you what Major so-and-so. He was actually this administrative secretary of General John Abu Zaid. John Abu Zaid was like the guy who's in charge about the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. He's like in Qatar. So he's the father, like he's the boss of all the generals, all of them around the Middle East. I think they call him the Central Command or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so he goes like, oh, so this guy, if you need an appointment, like the general, if they need an appointment with the general, they talk to this guy. And he says he may be just a major, but believe me, the generals respect him and love him. And he knows all of them. And I was like, really? And he was like, yeah. And the major was like, what's going on? He's like, well, yeah, we need to get him. He was just that. He's like, yeah, can you get him tomorrow? If you could go and get him a recommendation for SIV. There's a program, and I had to explain it to him.
Yeah.
And he goes, oh, yeah, I can definitely do that. Then he just left, and he says, yeah, I'll talk to you later. And after dinner, I come visit you. Now, I thought I still can't comprehend. This guy
I was going to say,
really
at this point, were you like, oh my God, this might happen?
The general is not here. Like if it's not in Maine, let's say camp. If we take convoy, we need about 6 hours to get there.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, he's right. He may be right, but he needs a week to do that at least. So he was like, oh yeah, I'll talk to you after dinner. Where do you live? So I give him the tent number, and he came. But anyhow, he came to me and he's like, hey, how's it going? And I was like, but before I met him, I was like, that's easy. He's like, yeah, that's it, man. He's going to help you. Tomorrow it'll be fine. You get your stuff. And I did not believe that. The guy seems to be the major, just says, I'm going to visit you after dinner. He wasn't really interested in, nor he seemed to be serious about what he's talking about. So I was like, you know what, he's not going to probably come, and he's probably felt like the colonel will forget. He wants to see his family after tomorrow. He's not going to ask him anything. So, but after dinner, he came in. He's like, hey, how's it going? And I was like, hey. I was like, yeah, I looked into this and all that stuff. Yeah, we can fly tomorrow. We can go tomorrow to the general, and it should take us. If we leave here at 9, we should be back at maybe 2 or 3 p.m. And I was like, how? And he's like, well, I got a helicopter request for us. It's going to take us tomorrow. I was like, really? And he's like, yeah. I did go back, and here's what the major says. He's, you know what? I want to help others. If you know certain people that wants to go, and you really trust them, this is not for everybody, but people that you really know them, and bring them, I'll help them and get them. I'm just going to do it too.
Wow. And
I went back to my friends. I said, I am leaving tomorrow. If you want, come with me to get a SIV recommendation letter. They did not believe me.
Yeah.
I kept swearing. They thought this was kind of a prank, that I'm going to take them, because you had to go in the desert, wait for the helicopter, and they're going to sit there and nothing happens. That's what they really thought. But anyhow, I could not. I tried every possible way, I swear to God, to convince them, but they were not. And some of them said, we believe you maybe, but I don't think you're going to get it. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I'm not wasting time and going. Anyhow, so I flew. we got to Fallujah and got the recommendation. The guy went in. Turns out he knows the general. The way shook hands and other things. So it took like 5 minutes to get it. Came back. Then
Did anybody go with you? Any of your friends?
No.
Wow.
Guess what happened? The guy who I told, he just arrived days last week.
This is
America.
The person. Oh, you had mentioned.
Took him since 2008 until now.
Did you tell him, like, why didn't you believe me?
I always told him that. And he always slapped himself on the cheek, he said, when he remembers that. He should have done it.
Yeah.
But anyhow, so that's how I got here. When I got here, I was...
Can I ask how many of your family you were allowed to bring over?
I wasn't allowed to bring anyone.
Just you?
Just me, yeah.
Wow.
So you're allowed to bring your wife and kids after the age of 21, but I was only like 23 at the time. So I didn't have no wife, no kids. So it was much easier to travel. But then, I came here and
what was that day like? You got, like, you're leaving Iraq for the first time ever to come to America?
Yeah, so before I left, before I started my immigration package, where I knew it's just not, I'm just going to start the paperwork just to convince myself and tell myself, at least I tried.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to do. At least I tried. So what I did, I submitted the paperwork and never got, approval until that major and helped me out. But anyhow, meanwhile, I got, so when I did it, before I even talked to the colonel and telling me about, like 3 months before that, there was this guy named McKenzie. He was a sergeant, communication sergeant, was going back home. And he came to me and says, Boxer, and I was like, what? He said, I'm going back home and I bought a bunch of stuff I really hate to throw away. If you want, take a look at it. Because when you're in the military, like, you buy expensive stuff, luggage, iPads, and not iPads. There was like these DVDs back then.
Yeah.
Mackenzie was, he does not know about this story, by the way, but I love him. Mackenzie was, told me to come and look at his stuff.
Yeah.
Before he came, told me that, maybe days, I had a dream that I was walking in downtown city somewhere in America, and it was just getting dark. And as I looked, there was like shops, like stores or whatever, and there was like a high-end store, I think it was a clothing store. And they have the mannequins and has like clothes. And I was looking at the clothes, but I also saw myself in kind of mirror reflection of the glass. And I saw myself carrying a backpack that was a blue and has a Puma logo on it. Puma, the sport brand. So the bag looked beautiful and it caught my eye, the color and all that stuff. So Mackenzie was like, well, here's the stuff I got. There's this DVD. I was like, I have DVD player. You can give it to someone. But then he's like, well, there's, sets of socks, there's here and there, but also I have this bag. And I was like, well, let me see it. And it was like a Puma bag, exactly like the one I saw in the dream. I smiled and I was like, I take the bag because I really liked it in the dream. But I took it to my room. I kept staring at it. And I was like, this is exactly the one I saw. I swear to God, I don't believe in magic. I don't believe in all that stuff. But this is, I can't believe this is a coincidence because there's a more story to it. So I flipped the bag. I started to remember this, like exactly the one. And then in the dream also that I walked, there was like a park, almost like a park with like lane of grass. There was trees scattered in there. It also looked like not a mountain, but it looked like a berm, kind of really high, about 50 feet high. You had to go in there, you had to walk and get tired. It's all like grass. It wasn't like natural because it looked like somebody, because it was straight. So in that, I in the dream that I went and ran behind and I want to see what's the other side of that berm. So I went on top. There was a bike lane but there was also a huge river that's filled with water. Unlike the Euphrates, it's shallow, shallow water over the years. This one has life. It has, it's fast. It's full.
Yeah.
It's you can't even see the other side. So that in my attention. So, but when Mackenzie showed me the bag, I took the bag, and so I took the bag and put it in there. When I got my SIV approval from the general, I was like, you know what? I'm going to travel with this bag. This is probably my lucky bag. So that was my lucky bag. That was my main bag. I mean, I have a luggage bag, but this one my backpack. And but then when they told me, oh well, congratulations, you're going to America, I was like, great. Here's your paperwork. Here's your all that stuff. And they're like, do you know where you're going? I was like, no. They're like, do you know any relatives or friends? I'm like, I don't know. I mean, I know military people, but they're like in military bases, and I didn't know like military person could count as a friend. And when like friends, like the way I knew friends is like somebody where you grew up with.
Yeah.
So I just told them there. They're like, well, we'll pick a spot for you. I'm like, yeah, pick anything. But they're like, they said, you're going to a sponsor volunteer named Catherine something. I was like, yeah, I'd go to Catherine. I immediately, when they told me the name Catherine, I was like, well, she's probably like Marilyn Monroe from the magazine. It's probably a blonde American chick who's going to show me around. You know what I mean?
Right?
I was like, wow, that's probably better than my friends. So that's how I thought. But then I went in there, and Catherine was 75 years old lady, wonderful lady.
Right.
She took me in her home, went on for a while. But she showed me around. She got me driver license in her car. So she was showing me how to use a credit card. I didn't have that.
Wait, what kind of car was she driving?
No, it was better. It was better than Honda Civic. She was driving Honda Acura.
Okay.
TL, that's retirees, folks, have a lot of money. You know what I mean? I like young folks.
Yeah.
Yeah, she drove a nice car. Her house was really nice. But she helped me apply for social. She'd take me to places, apply for Social Security, driver license. She taught me to go to the bank and apply for a debit card and how to use it. And I did not know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But long story short, before I got to Catherine, I had to stay a couple of days in a whole apartment because by the time I traveled, Catherine was like on a vacation or whatever, and she was coming later. So the guy who they have a sponsor from like a settlement agency who got me at the airport in Louisiana. Oh, they told me you're going with Catherine in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. So Louisiana was like sounded. I've never heard that state before, so it sounded like soul luxury, or you know what I mean. Yeah. I was like, that's Louisiana. That sounds good. So I went there. The guy says, you're going to sit in an apartment temporary for maybe 2 or 3 days until Catherine comes here. We didn't want to cut her vacation because she's obviously volunteering. So I was like, fine. And so got me at the airport. It was raining so bad. Like I couldn't see through the windshield. And the rain never seen. Like in Iraq, hardly rains, and it's very little.
Yeah.
And when it rains, people just freak out. Like nothing like here. If that rain goes in Iraq, like within 20 minutes, Pittsburgh Lane, Iraq will be flooded. Like you're just done. Everybody will die. Right. That's how bad it's like. God. And so I was like, I couldn't see him. Like, how is he driving? You know what I mean? But anyhow, he goes, you're gonna get this apartment. I'm gonna open the door. You're gonna say 1, 2, 3, and you just as soon as I open the door of the van, you get out and take your luggage because you're gonna get sweat. So I went in, gave me the keys, went in. In the morning, I woke up. There was all kind of sounds of birds, animals, birds. Like it's like sounds of birds singing, different types. There was squirrel, which is actually blew my mind. I've never seen squirrel in my life.
Yeah.
I thought this animal is only in the Amazon,
Yeah.
That's how I thought in Amazon, like a forest and everything. And I was just staring at it, loving it. But then the sounds came out. Like I woke up super early. I just wanted to see what's around. I couldn't see anything. I was impressed how green it is.
Mhm.
You know, I came from the desert. Like I was like, this is impossible.
Yeah.
Like how many trees? Like there's green everywhere. There's no dirt anywhere.
Mhm.
So I was like, my eyes was getting tired from it, and from just the color of green. But anyhow, then I kept walking, and I made a turn on the right, and there was a park, and that park looked like the one in the dream,
Wow.
scattered trees.
Yeah.
And I was like, you got to be kidding me. And I was like, I looked up there, and that's the berm that I saw, and I swear to God, it was exactly the same one. I'm like,
Incredible.
I'm gonna go up there, and if I see a bike lane and there's river behind, this is not a coincidence. This is like me coming here. I don't know. It's a God planned or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's definitely something, and it's got to be good. You
Yeah.
know, and that's probably because I was really confused, scared that I'm gonna fail when I go to America and all that stuff. So I swear to God, I went. I was just trying to get there. I run, literally maybe less than half mile just to get to that big berm or hill.
Yeah.
And I got up there, and guess what? There was a bike lane, and there's a bench. I sat on the bench, kept staring at the river for probably an hour and a half.
Yeah.
Just channel like that, got some cigarettes, sat smoking, chain
Yeah.
smoking, thinking about this. Like, this is crazy.
Right.
And there's this guy running in the morning. But like now it's like about 9, maybe 8:30 at the time. And I asked him, and I said, hey, what is this river called? And he goes like, that's the Mississippi River.
Hmm.
And I was right by then I realized that my apartment, it's by the LSU, Louisiana State University campus.
Right.
So that's the story, like how I got there.
Wow.
But very interesting. I still have the bag
I was gonna
somewhere in my
ask.
bed.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I still have it somewhere. I always clean my garage, and I told my wife, don't ever throw this bag.
No.
But I probably have it somewhere in the basement. But
What a
anyhow, is
story.
that the questions that you have? I mean, is that
Yeah.
enough? Is
Yeah.
that
I mean, I was just thinking of how wonderful of a storyteller you are, Ehab, and that I was, we filled this time here on the podcast so easily because I've talked with you before on our programs with VBC, and I always know that you can definitely flesh out a story. Whenever I ask a question, I don't have to worry about I'm going to get a one-word answer. I was like, Ehab, you're an easy easy person to listen
well?
to.
That's good because I apologize. I do talk a lot and take a lot of your time.
Don't apologize.
uh,
That's part of
uh,
what's great about a podcast is we get to
if you
listen
want
to
to do another
stories.
podcast, fine.
Well,
Finish
there's so
because
much
that's
more to the story. There's story of like what you did with the Americans, stories about the missions that you went on. There's stories about how you made it from Louisiana up to Pittsburgh.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
your story is very. I was enraptured by it. I love how you told it, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on the podcast and tell our audience about your story.
No, man, I just want to be, I just want to reach out to people you know, and your audience, if they want to reach out to me, find me on LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to message me, Facebook and whatnot, more than happy to, hang out with you, tell you a story. If you want to meet me in person, I'm a very social person.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't talk, I die. Matter of fact, I toasted my vocal cord twice because I talked too much, and I had to do 2 surgeries.
Oh man. Okay, that
And
was
it
the surgery we talked about. Is the
yeah. I mean, I talk loud. I don't do it anymore now, but I used to talk loud. Well, not here.
Yeah.
Here's fine. That's how I should be talking. But when I go to bars and places, public places, I'm very loud. I'm
You can
always
only be
telling.
loud at a bar. About bars are loud, therefore loud people. So that's
Yeah, but I
fine.
talk too much. Here's the thing,
Yeah.
though. Like I'm always telling stories and funny jokes and all that stuff, and a lot of it is about my life. Uh, but then I do it too much, then I abuse my vocal cord.
That's the double-edged sword, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Yeah. So I don't know that's what they are. At least they told me. They were like, "Do you talk loud?" And I was like, "Yes, I do." They were like, "Where?" I was like, "I go to bars." And or maybe hang out with my friends, or go to a sport game and whatever it is. And now I'm going through speech therapy, so they're teaching me how to speak like that right
Like,
now.
no, yeah. They're like, maybe time to whisper for a little while.
Yeah.
It sounds strange. We've talked a bit about it on the podcast on the Scuttlebutt before, is saying thank you for your service, but I feel like it's a little different saying thank you for your service. And
Yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. By all means, I think I'm fortunate and grateful to be part of this country. I would not have the life that I am in. I'm a very successful, I consider myself. I have a great career here. I have 2 boys.
Hmm.
I'm financially, mentally, and everything is stable. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What else do we want from life?
Well, I know that Pittsburgh
but
is better with you here, and I appreciate you being here in Pittsburgh with us, despite the
yeah,
snow. I know the snow is not fun, but I
all
guess
right.
if you have the option of sand or snow, I guess I'd take snow.
I take sand.
Okay, we'll agree to disagree on that one at least.
Hey, I mean, your car gets dusty all the time, but your car gets snow on it, and
It stops working.
salt eats it all the time.
Yeah, that's true.
What do you want? I think I can tolerate the heat more than the cold. I really do.
Well, again, I appreciate your time coming on the Scuttlebutt, and to our audience, please like, share, subscribe, and ring the bell, or send me an email, Sean@veteransbreakfastclub.org. Ehab, it's been a pleasure, and I do hope that we can have you back on the Scuttlebutt to tell more of your story.
Yeah. I don't think one episode will be, if you want to hear the whole story.
All right.
Just let me know. I can help.
Perfect. Thank you, and have a wonderful day. It's great talking with you, and I look forward to chatting with you soon. I want to thank Millerstown Pick Apart for their generous support and sponsorship of this program. For Millerstown's hours, direction, inventory, and pricing, go to pickapartyard.com. That's PICAPARTYARD.com. Thank you so much, Millerstown, and we'll see you on the next Scuttlebutt.